On January 21, 1983, the Soviet nuclear submarine K-10 was in the South China Sea. While submerged, the boat collided with an unknown object. The crew felt a strong blow, which shook the entire hull of the submarine. According to the commander's recollections, there was a feeling that the K-10 literally grappled with an unknown object, and for some time they moved together. At 21:30 the submarine surfaced. The crew detected flashing lights of a receding object. Arriving at the base, specialists examined the damaged bow of the submarine and discovered a foreign piece of metal, which apparently belonged to an unknown object. 2 years later, an article was published in the Chinese press that in January 1983, a submarine carrying a large group of Chinese scientists perished in the South China Sea. The K-10 belonged to the Project 675 submarines. The design of the submarine was non-standard. Cruise missiles were installed horizontally to launch, containers with missiles were raised to a vertical position. For this, Soviet sailors called the K-10 a clamshell, and for the noise it made, a braying cow. Despite the noise of the Project 675 submarine entering the Mediterranean Sea undetected through the narrow Strait of Gibraltar, the power plant consisted of 2 VMA reactors. These were water-water nuclear reactors using thermal neutrons. Uranium dioxide, highly enriched in the 235 isotope, was used as nuclear fuel. The submarine was equipped with cruise missiles that could hit surface ships located beyond the radar horizon. For that time, these missiles were quite formidable and effective weapons. Guidance using a radio viewer made it possible to select a target and select interference with great accuracy. Due to their high speed, the missiles were impossible to intercept with artillery fire, and their powerful warhead made it possible to destroy ships of any class at a long distance. On January 21, 1983, one of the Project 675 K-10 submarines was on combat duty in the South China Sea. Everything went as normal. When the submarine entered the designated area, Commander Valery Medvedev gave the order to make a turn on the opposite course in order to inspect the dead zone behind the submarine with sonars. The fact is that American submarines used. The next tactic was to follow the Soviet submarines at a short distance, trying to stay to the right of the propeller line. This allowed them to remain in the dead zone and be undetected by Soviet sonar. Due to the sound distortion of the noise of the rotating propeller, it was impossible to detect objects located behind the submarine. It is for this reason that it was necessary to resort to a tactical maneuver, consisting of frequent and sharp changes in course, even to the point of turning around. The Americans nicknamed this tactical maneuver of Soviet submarines Crazy Ivan. When a Soviet submarine performed similar actions, American submarines stopped the engines and declared complete silence in the compartments, but due to the large inertia, the submarine continued to move forward and often this led to a collision. The K-10, on the orders of the commander, made a turn. The sonars began to probe the dead zone, but at the same moment the crew felt a strong blow. The Soviet submarine grappled with an unknown object and moved with it for some time. An emergency alert was announced on K-10. The first 3 compartments had to be sealed. The communications commander requested the first compartment, but there was no response. Meanwhile, the submarine moved with a slight drop in speed and trimmed to the bow. A few minutes later, communication with the first compartment was restored and the crew reported that it was sealed. At 21:30 K-10 surfaced. The commander began to inspect the surface of the sea through periscope optics, but failed to see foreign objects. Then Medvedev ordered a return to the place where the collision took place. There he observed strange, orange flashing lights that disappeared after 40 minutes. The navigator and signalman also saw flashing lights of an unknown object. And the commander reported the incident to the leadership, after which he received an order to immediately set a course for the Cam Ranh military base, located on the coast of Vietnam. K-10 was on the surface, accompanied by the large anti-submarine ship Petropavlovsk. At the base, a boat with members of the commission and divers approached the submarine, and the crew was ordered not to leave. Experts examined the submarine, recording severe damage to the bow. It seemed that the object with which the K-10 tripped had been cut off like a razor by the bow of the Soviet submarine, and a stuck metal piece belonging to an unknown object was also discovered. When K-10 returned to Pavlovsk, its deformed torpedo tubes, which contained nuclear weapons, were cut out. Employees of the special department seized the logbooks. After studying all the documentation, including the logbook of the main power plant, the commission came to the conclusion that the K-10's speed limit was greatly overestimated, as a result of which the submarine arrived in the given area several hours earlier. It was prohibited to enter the duty area ahead of schedule, so K-10 circled around it until it collided with an unknown object. Many years after the collapse of the Soviet Union, Medvedev will tell in an interview that, in his opinion, in January 1983, his submarine collided with a Chinese submarine. In 1959, the Soviet leadership transferred the technical documentation of Project 629 to China. This was a series of Soviet diesel-electric ballistic missile submarines. In 1960, at a shipyard located in the city of Dalian, the laying of the first Chinese submarine of Project 629 took place, which was assigned hull number 200. At the same time, another Project 629 submarine was laid down in Komsomolsk-on-Amur, which was transferred to the People's Republic of China in 1962. This boat was assigned hull number 208. In 1985, an obituary was published in the Chinese press about the death of a large group of scientists on submarines during ballistic missile tests in 1982. According to the data that Medvedev had, the side number of the deceased Chinese submarine was 208. The Chinese side did not officially admit that their submarine was lost as a result of a collision with the Soviet K-10. It still remains a mystery for what purpose the Chinese submarine, if it was one, was sitting on the tail of the K-10. There are still no official statements regarding the accident that occurred on January 21, 1983 in the South China Sea.